From the unexplained to the mundane, join us on our journey to the fringe. Hello and welcome to Journey to the Fringe. You know, Chelsea, the Fringe store called, and they're all out of us. We are your podcast hosts, some of whom don't actually like Seinfeld at all, but thought people would like the reference. Taylor and Chelsea here today, bringing you some Halloween features, which Chelsea is in charge of this time around. So I will just leave this for her to take over.
That was a good one. That was the best one I think ever. Not to say they're not all good, Taylor.
I play to my audience. Who is you for this part of it?
Yes, it really is. And boy, was that a winner. Hello. Have you ever wondered what is out there in the world that is bleeding but shouldn't? I guess that could go in many different directions. But
we all hope it's not us internally, of course. The most scary of them all.
Yeah. But like the proper way internally, not bad internal bleeding. That's bad. But blood should be flowing through you.
That's not considered bleeding if it's flowing through you, Chelsea.
No. I thought it might be. Okay. The river of blood, it needs to be constantly streaming, does it not?
Okay.
No?
Okay,
it's
sure.
Bleeding on the inside.
I don't think bleeding is interchangeable with flowing in this situation.
You can't say that I'm wrong when I say that.
In a very pedantic way, no, I can't.
Is bleeding when it comes out in places it shouldn't be. I guess I don't know the definition for bleeding, is what I'm figuring out. Anyhow, the shouldn't portion of that I'm talking about today isn't the fact that I don't know the correct definition of bleeding, apparently. So that really makes me take pause for this whole episode, but it's already done. What I'm talking about today is not humans, so it doesn't even matter what kind of bleeding I'm talking about. And I'm going to be honest, I thought I may have had a lot more hits in my research than I actually got because the category only contains like 3 subcategories to my knowledge. Here I thought we were going to be finding like bleeding dolls, bleeding elevators where the blood rushes out, like a lot of it.
Wait, are you saying they made that up for Hollywood?
Apparently.
Huh.
No bleeding elevators actually have ever happened.
Huh.
Yeah.
That we're aware of, or have been documented, we should say.
Yes, exactly. Bleeding kitchen appliances, bleeding...
You know what? Like a bleeding fridge where you go in to get like your ice cubes and they're blood ice cubes. I could see that.
Or it just rushes out like the elevator.
Yeah. When you open the door.
I would hate either of those. They'd be super uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, a lot of these stories where a thing is bleeding, likely it turns out somebody who was just touching it turned out to be bleeding beforehand, is my guess.
Maybe. I guess we'll see.
So we don't get those stories because those people feel sad.
Yeah. Anyhow, the point of the matter is I just thought that there would be more things that bled that shouldn't be bleeding. Apparently it's not like that profound of a problem amongst many things, just super specific things. So
yeah, you know what, Chelsea, just because we've talked a bit about this, 2 things I expected to see on this list that didn't end up showing up: dolls, definitely expected dolls, and fountains, definitely expected a fountain.
Fountains, hey?
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't even think to search bleeding fountains, but it didn't come up. Okay. So I'm assuming it's not that big of a problem.
Also, possibly ground, but we didn't. I didn't direct you that way.
No, ground didn't come up at all.
Dare I say, even a blood geyser? But that's probably just Hollywood mumbo jumbo again.
That's it. Where have you seen a bleeding geyser in Hollywood?
Evil Dead 2.
Oh yeah,
but
that's
everything.
totally
Everything bleeds.
And it was everything was a bleeding geyser in Evil Dead 2. Literally everything.
Yeah. Except Bruce Campbell.
Brings me to the next point. The cabin from Evil Dead 2 is our first point. Just kidding, it's not. It should be, though. Okay, what do you think it is? What do you think is the number 1 hit of bleeding things?
Oh, it's definitely got to be religious statues.
Oh, yeah, it is. Religious figures. It sure is. I don't know why. so particular towards specifically Catholic religious figures for some reason, and they're fucking bleeding out. Someone give them an iron transfusion.
Yeah, they gotta have like the little blood that they have. They've wasted it all.
Every drop of blood that is flowing through those statues, they're losing. So, occurrence of bleeding religious figures actually goes back quite a long time, but it starts coming to popularity occurring around World War II, so around the 40s-ish, between that time, 40s and 60s.
Oh wait, sorry, it's not really a thing before then?
It is, but
okay.
It isn't really talked about that much until there's like this mania of like religious figures that are bleeding in the 40s to 60s-ish. You don't really hear about it talked about that much, and I don't even have like anything to talk about until then. So all I hear is that it has happened. It goes back like probably to Jesus times, I'm assuming. Jesus, I'm not even gonna say what I was just gonna say. It could probably be considered offensive.
It would probably have to go back as far as statues of, really it's Jesus and Mary, isn't it, that are bleeding. So they gotta go back as far as those statues.
Yeah, and like I said, specific to Catholicism for some weird reason. And the phenomenon was manifesting in the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, where statues and pictures of Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary and the saints have appeared to bleed. And they bleed in significant ways from the hand, the brows, places where Jesus was allegedly wounded. Like, should we even be calling him Jesus? He should be going by, what's his actual name? Yeshua or Joshua?
Joshua, yeah. Or as some people later to us call him, little baby Jesus.
Yeah, who's Jesus? If you want to pronounce it correctly. Basically, it's stigmata. The statues are bleeding in places where apparently Jesus was wounded by the rabbit, I think is how it goes. And that's where he bleeds from.
And he cursed the rabbit to poop eggs on one day per year.
Exactly.
And in shame, he hides
what the rabbit did to him. Exactly. But they have to be chocolate. Or they bleed from their eyes as if they're crying, or their eyes are watering blood. Whichever one you choose to believe for yourself. Never anuses, Taylor.
I'm glad you did the research that nobody's willing to do. These statues bleed from the butt. Nobody else has to Google that now.
You heard it here first, just like so many facts.
And I really hope you guys trust us with that and are not now saying, oh, that's bullshit. They didn't actually do that. I got it checked.
I mean, I can't blame them for wanting to check that, so... If you find anything compelling, please put it in the comments. So this has actually been reported happening in religious icons for eons, like I said, and that's a scientific term, eons. The number of occurrences just keep on increasing over the decades. And like I said, it kind of hits that fever pitch in the World War II era for the Catholics.
Was it because the bullets just start flying at that point and we didn't know how to wound statues before that point?
No, it sounds like that's just when the statues got really sad.
Oh, okay. It makes sense. That's such a sad time.
They reached like a solar maximum of sadness during World War II. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some statues that have reported bleeding. First up, we have a small statue of the Virgin Mary belonging to Olga Rodriguez, a woman in Santiago, Chile, that on November 14, 1992, began to bleed from its eyes. And that's the statue, not Olga. People who began to stop by the Rodriguez home alerted police to the phenomenon, and the local criminal investigation department took samples of the liquid for analysis. It turned out to be type O blood. Can you imagine? What would compel you to call the police on someone because their statue is bleeding?
What would compel you to check the blood type?
Yeah, the police were compelled to do that, but I mean, if you're super religious, I could maybe see calling the police to be
Are you going to call
the bleeding statue?
The priest? That pun doesn't work. Sorry, that was awful.
I was like, what? The same year, similar reports came from Lake Ridge, Virginia. A priest, I don't know what the abbreviation FR means, but that's what it is. Father. Really? That's how you abbreviate father?
I assume.
Oh yeah, no, that makes logical sense now that you say that. Where a priest, father, I've never seen it abbreviated like this. I am shocked.
It could also mean French.
No, it has to
That's the first thing that comes up.
James Bruce of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church reported cold weather caused statues of the Virgin Mary to weep tears of blood. It must have been really cold. Not only had many parishioners seen the primary statue at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church weep blood, but various other statues that Bruce had been standing near. Third incident occurred in San Tomas, Mexico. It was first seen by a young girl praying before the statue for the healing of her mother. Returning home, she found her mother up and fixing supper. First time she had been out of bed in 3 months. In 1994, stories came from Ireland, Australia, and Puerto Rico. In 1996, reports came from Trinidad and Kansas, and in 1997 from Benin, which is in Africa. Through the decade, more than a dozen cases appeared in Italy alone. I mean, when you're seeing it connected with Catholicism, I mean, that's probably where you're going to see it concentrated. Blood from the statue of the Virgin in Las Vegas that began bleeding in 1998 has been caught on pieces of cotton and given away to the faithful. It has been tied to a number of healings. As with the case in Chile, many of these cases have been investigated at least minimally, and the substance oozing from the pictures or statues is indeed blood, though the type of blood varies from incident to incident. Many have been seen by large groups and have occurred in such a way that the more obvious means of faking the phenomena have been ruled out. Nevertheless, 2 of the cases have been given what might be thought of as a thorough investigation.
Now, Chelsea, I am just curious. I'm sorry if I missed this, but what are the more obvious ways of faking it? Is it like taking your own blood and putting it on the statue?
You haven't missed it.
Okay.
You have once again predicted where this podcast episode is going. So give me like 5 minutes and I'll talk to you about it a little bit. There are still recent cases of weeping statues happening. A few I have is Argentina. Just a couple of years ago, a statue of the Virgin Mary in the town of Metan reportedly began to weep blood. This event attracted many visitors and was seen by some as a miraculous sign, which I'll talk about in a second. Mexico in 2020, in Acapulco, a statue of Jesus was reported to have blood from the forehead. This incident drew significant attention from locals and the media. Those are some of the most recent and some of the most notable weeping statues include, and these are huge ones, Lady of Akita in Japan, which is from a town of the same name, where a statue of the Virgin Mary wept, perspired, and bled from the right hand in what appeared to be a cross-shaped wound. This case passed a rigorous investigation by local scientists, and the local diocesan authorities and the Vatican.
Diocese.
Phenomenon. It says diocesan, so it must be
dioceses. Okay.
No, diocesan, maybe.
Okay.
In the Vatican. The phenomenon are associated with stigmata and the 3 apparitions of the Virgin Mary received by a deaf Japanese Roman Catholic nun, Sister Agnes Sasagawa. This one was also broadcast on live television for a lot of Japan to tune in. And I think stigmata would be kind of a cool thing to maybe do a podcast episode on. I don't know, because it's so religious. But stigmata is the bleeding, I guess. I'm making this up. I'm not even looking this up. The wounds of Jesus when he was on the cross.
Yeah,
so
it's not. Yeah, it's the what do they call it? The somethings of the cross.
The crown of thorns on his forehead.
Yeah.
And what's the third one? There's a third one.
There's the lashings. Isn't it 7?
Yeah, it is 7. I don't know where I got 3 from. I'm just going off this of memory. Hold on. Let's find it out. Brought it up a few times. We might as well tell you guys what stigmata is. Bodily wounds, scars, and pain which occurs in locations corresponding to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus. That's it. Hands, wrists, feet, near the heart, the head, the crown of thorns, and the back from carrying the cross and scourging.
That's right. The last one's the spear in the heart.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I only know this because of the horror movie.
The movie Stigmata. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was not a bad movie. Next of the notable sightings is Christ of the Tears, Bolivia. And this is from the Chapel of the Christ of the Tears of St. Peter, most of the statue of Christ that has repeatedly shed tears of blood every Good Friday since 1995, and it attracts thousands of worshippers annually. It also has one of the most, I think it's the biggest statue of Jesus, not to be confused with one that's crying, but they also have one of the biggest statues of Jesus there nearby to this. But this guy, he cries annually tears of blood. And then lastly, in 1995, a Madonna statue appeared to weep blood in the town of Civita Vecchia in Italy, where about 60 witnesses testified to witnessing the phenomenon, and the local bishop said that he himself had seen it weep. Blood on the statue was later found to be male. I don't know what that has to do with Madonna.
Wait, the blood was male?
Yeah.
How can you tell?
I don't know. I mean, we can do a lot with DNA now. I don't know about 1995.
No, but like if it's just red blood cells, like red blood cells don't have DNA. But I guess there's other stuff in there. Okay. Never mind.
I don't know. They don't, though?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Take your word for that. So most, if not all of these weeping statues are associated with other kind of paranormal things, including miraculous healing, Marian apparitions, which are sightings of Mary, some sort of angels and miracles, and eventually pilgrimages, of course, as a result of the weeping, which came up a little bit. I mean, this is going to draw people to it, that there's, you know, some religious icon that is crying tears of blood. Hoax? Perhaps. In 1985, a statue in Montreal was reported to be weeping and bleeding. However, it turned out that the statue was smeared with the owner's blood and shaving cream. Of all things, Montreal's a weird place. In 2008, church custodian Vincenzo di Constanzo went on trial in northern Italy for faking blood on the statue of the Virgin Mary when his own DNA was matched to the blood. Would they match it to the blood? Like, was his blood already on file, or did he agree to a DNA test? And
yeah, that's one of those awkward things with 23andMe. Like, anybody who's done a test, the police have that shit. They do.
Yeah, that's the awkward thing. Like, you do a murder, and then they're like, oh, you shouldn't have done 23andMe, asshole. In 2018, at Our Lady Guadalupe Catholic Church in Hobbs, New Mexico, a Mary statue was reported to be producing tears. In July of that year, the Catholic Diocese of Las Cruces revealed the tests confirmed the tears in fact had the chemical composition of rose-scented olive oil. While it has been said that it's fairly easy to hoax a bleeding statue, there are those that remain unexplained. Far less that have been reported, of course, and given the large amount of paranormal happenings associated with the weeping statues, there may be something more to it a small amount of the time? Question mark?
It is weird that it's only happening to Catholic statues, though.
I know, isn't that weird? Next topic, Bleeding House of Atlanta. That's the next bleeding thing. Atlanta police have been called just after midnight by a woman claiming what looked like blood was coming out of the floor at her home at 1114 Fountain Drive.
A fountain of blood, I like that. That's a good road to live on for this to happen.
So. In the late 1980s, elderly couple William and Minnie Winston lived in a small private house in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Everything in their life was calm and normal, except that William had diseased kidneys and was connected to a dialysis machine every day, which he really did not like and why he was often out of sorts. Fair enough, William. Late in the evening of September 8, 1987, 77-year-old Minnie Winston took a bath, dried herself with a towel, and as she was getting ready to leave the bathroom, she noticed a red spot on the floor. It looked like blood, but Minnie was sure there were no wounds on her body where it could leak. The blood could leak out. And when she looked around the entire bathroom, she found another red spot, this time on the wall. Red liquid slowly flowed from it down to the floor. Ew, that's disgusting.
Huh.
Minnie jumped out of the bathroom and saw bloody streaks on the floor in the hallway, smeared on the tiles. I'd be looking for my husband. She immediately thought that something had happened to her husband, and that the blood might have leaked during dialysis. However, when she woke up William, 79, there were no sources of bleeding on his body. There was no blood on or near the dialysis machine. The frightened couple walked around all 6 rooms of the house and found bloody stains on the floor in almost every room. Their house was old, brick, and very strong. They had lived there for 22 years, and until now, nothing unusual has happened in the house. They had no pets, they had never seen rats, mice, or other possible pests. They didn't know what to do and finally decided to just go to bed. I would call the cops, I think.
I look at that. Let's just sleep on it.
Yeah, let's just go to bed. There's a disturbing amount of blood, but
this is more blood than I was expecting this house to have.
That's such an old person response too. Like, let's just ignore it and it'll go away. The next morning, the blood on the floor and walls had not gone away, and there even seemed to be more of it. So the Winstons decided to call the police. Here we go. Police searched the house and indeed found copious amounts of blood in the bathroom, kitchen, living room, bedroom, hallways, and even the basement. They found no evidence that the person had been attacked. They declared the Winston house a crime scene and surrounded it with yellow tape. The couple was allowed to stay inside the house. Blood samples were collected and sent to the laboratory for analysis. First of all, in order to determine whether it is human blood at all. Soon the answer came that yes. Moreover, it was type 0. Is there a type 0?
Type O. Type O.
They mean O?
Yeah, I think they mean O.
Both the Winstons had type A blood.
Is it? Do you find it odd? Just if we can speculate on it at this point, every time we've come up when they tested it's type O?
Twice, yes, it has been type O.
The 2 times, I guess, is technically how you
I'm going to call it type 0 from now on.
Okay.
Oh, you have type 0 blood. Yes, it might be weird that the paranormal does ooze type 0 blood. It's the blood of the paranormal, I guess. According to Detective Steve Cartwright, who led the case, he had worked in the police force for more than 10 years up to that point, but never encountered such an oddity. Police examined the house again, but in the end, they still found nothing more. A few days later, the story hit the press and a crowd of onlookers and journalists flocked to the house. Also psychics who offered their services, believing that something supernatural was involved.
I love that part of these stories where they're not asked to show up at all, but man, do the psychics show up for all of these things.
Oh yeah, and you gotta believe the Warrens were there.
Yeah.
Just looking for an
in. Yeah, them in their prime right there.
Yeah. Then a group of 5 enthusiastic skeptics was formed who decided to get to the bottom of this phenomenon at all costs. What were the costs? They were Joe Nickel, Larry Johnson, Rick Moen, and Rebecca Long, who were later joined by Lieutenant G. Walker, who was on the original team of investigators on the case. At some point, they managed to get a police report from the inspection of the house, which contained color photos of bloody stains. Alas, these photos are not available on the internet. Alas! But no further breakthroughs happened. Lieutenant Walker believed that there is no poltergeist intervention, as psychics believed, and assumed that something criminal had happened in the house. He also did not rule out that the spouse could have been persuaded to commit a hoax by promising them money or something else. Walker then discovered that the Winston's daughter worked at the hospital as a nurse and had access to blood donations. According to this theory, the daughter could deliberately stage a bloody show in order to make her parents look crazy, and so that they would be recognized as incompetent. Then the daughter would get their house for herself. Okay, I mean, that's a lot of pain to go through to just get the house.
Yeah. And these skeptics, I'm not a huge fan of how far they had to stretch the story.
Oh no, they stretched it pretty far.
Although, I do agree, if you're going to fake this, you gotta have somebody else's blood, because the first thing you're gonna do is check your blood.
Well, of course, we saw that with the statues. Any layman's gonna know that. And why don't we get to hear from the psychics? Why are we taking the sides of this, like, shoddily put together skeptical group?
That's a good question.
That wanted to disprove it at all costs. Like,
at all costs,
who knows what they did?
They probably spent like $50 on it.
People. Yeah.
Upwards of 70.
Who believes them? Like, at all costs. Like, get out of here, group of skeptics. Walker considered this version very plausible. What was it? The daughter.
Yeah, the daughter getting blood from the hospital and stealing the house.
Could you imagine?
That's a good made-for-TV right there.
That's, to me, like, more at all costs than what the skeptics are doing. And they said at all costs for the skeptics. So maybe the skeptics did it. They said all costs.
Yeah, you know what? They were looking for anybody else other than the skeptics to blame. That is a good point.
We just fucking solved this. Walker considered this version very plausible, the one we just said, of course, as he found out that there had been long-standing serious conflicts between the Winstons and their daughter. However, he was removed from the case long ago, and the official investigation quickly reached a dead end, and the case was simply closed. A police spokesman later admitted that they still do not understand where the blood came from.
Huh. So, yeah, it is actually unfortunate that none of the psychics got to give an answer.
I know. This article quickly took the side of the skeptics, and I'm not a fan of that. All we got from what the paranormal people said was about the poltergeist. They didn't think it was poltergeist. Which, if I'm thinking about it, and it's paranormal, it's probably going to be poltergeist.
Yeah.
You gotta think. They're the ones causing all sorts of shit.
Well, and there was no sightings, so if it was paranormal, it's probably
there was no sightings. Either that or there's some sort of murder happened in their house. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert. Next up, bleeding walls, which I got a lot more hits out of than I thought I would. First bleeding wall up, the Tallman house. Residents of an ordinary home in Horicon, Wisconsin, nice name, Horicon, found themselves the victim of a very strange thing indeed, a haunted bunk bed. That's not a fucking wall, that's a bunk bed. No.
Maybe it's a Murphy bed.
Hey, you just solved it. A Murphy bunk bed. According to Cult of Weird, in 1988, this family suffered through 9 months of intense paranormal activity after purchasing a used bunk bed, including spectral apparitions. They ultimately fled their home, but not before rumors of even stranger things, including bleeding walls, spread through their neighborhood. What? Why not just get rid of the fucking bunk bed if they think it's the bunk bed?
Did they take a mortgage out on the bunk bed? Like they couldn't afford to not have it?
We're never gonna know. Next up, Mary Knoll Seminary. Since knocked down? Legend has it. Oh, since I guess it was...
It has since been knocked down, yeah.
Yeah. Legend has it that Mary Knoll Seminary in Illinois was once haunted by the spirit of a monk. According to the Shadowlands, he hung himself in the bell tower. After his death, along with unexplained noises, there were reports of fresh blood oozing down the tower's exterior. Oh, that one's spooky. See, that one's what you want for Halloween. Fresh blood oozing down the tower. The house on Brownsville Road. A Pittsburgh family was allegedly tormented by a demonic entity known as the Demon of Brownsville Road. They reported bleeding walls, among other things. That's the end of that one. We said walls. You got it. That's all we're here for. Is bleeding walls, of course. No other details. And it was hit really early on in that sentence. The San Pedro haunting. Family in San Pedro, California, experienced what they believed to be a particularly violent poltergeist. Physical attacks and even an attempted hanging are just two of the more extreme phenomena they suffered back in the late 1980s. Relevant to our interests here, they also encountered a mysterious red ooze that seemed to drip down from their cupboards and other places. It was later reportedly confirmed to be human blood plasma. And next one, horror at the Winston house. Perhaps the strangest incident involving bleeding walls occurred at the Winston house, also in the late 1980s, which was the time for bleeding walls. In the September 11, 1987 issue of the Register Guard newspaper, there appeared the curious headline, Bleeding House Besieged. It told the story of William and Minnie Winston. Oh, this is the guys again. Let's see what it has to say. I didn't even know it made it in twice. Oh no, it was a bleeding house and then they came back up for the walls.
But it was clearly just
I only
floor.
have 2 topics. Anyhow, They contacted police after discovering blood throughout their home. According to the register guard, they reported finding blood on the floors and walls of the house they had rented for 22 years. Lab tests confirmed it was human blood.
Wait,
However,
they
it was
rented it? I missed that in the last one. So the daughter wanted to rent the house, according to the
Yes.
skeptics.
Maybe it was rent controls. In fucking, where is it?
It was in
Ohio or
Georgia,
something.
I think.
Oh, yes, somewhere where it's not rent controlled. Millie Winston made first contact with the mysterious pools of blood after stepping out of her bathtub on September 8th. After investigating, police would later find blood in the bathroom, kitchen, living room, bedroom, and halls nearly everywhere, and yet no explanation for its existence could be found. The story would also appear in the New York Times, and believe it or not, it remains a mystery. I was really hoping by continuing to read they would have said something about the psychics. Alas, they did not. So these cases are all interesting and all, but the truth is, paranormal or not, having anything ooze out of your wall is troubling, to say the least. What would you do if you just saw, like, blood oozing out of your wall?
And that's a good thing to bring up at this point, because I might have to sleep on it.
I feel like first I'd wipe it.
Yeah,
Like,
first you wipe it,
what
but
the
then
fuck
it
is
comes
this?
back. Do you smell it? To see, like, hey, what
Probably.
is this?
No, I probably would. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, I would definitely smell it. Nobody's watching me. I'm not recording a
Do
podcast.
you look
about
both
it at that
ways
point.
and then smell it?
Maybe. Make sure
Okay.
nobody's watching me. I don't taste it though. Sure,
I don't know. Do you
taste it.
call a contractor? Do you call a plumber in thinking that you, like, hit a line of something?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I wipe it, comes back, I maybe smell what I wiped. I call for a second opinion, and I go from there. I think that's how it plays out.
Okay.
I call my brother.
That's reasonable.
FaceTime him. What do you think this is? And then he'll ask me if I smelled it. And then if I wiped it first, and then if I smelled it, then I'm not sure. And I'm heavily relying on the second opinion at that point. What I should do. Anyhow, sometimes a mysterious goo has an ordinary explanation. Surfactant leaching. This happens when humidity causes paint ingredients to drip down your wall. Fairly normal, I guess. Never happened to me. You know what has happened to me, though, is I lived in an apartment where there were smokers before me. So it did look like it was bleeding from, like, the top of the walls. Because of all the, like, nicotine grossness.
Interesting.
Up there.
And I have seen stories, too, of bees making hives in walls and then honey leaking from the walls.
I mean, you can't hope for a better option that is honey coming down.
See,
and in which case, smelling is probably going to solve your problem, right?
But
there.
also the
It smells
implications
like
of
honey.
bees living in your walls, I think, is actually worse than just like a paranormal blood leaking from it.
What would you prefer?
Probably the bloody walls. Like, that's an infestation I don't want to have to deal with.
Bees. Yeah, but the blood is a different kind of infestation. Either way, you have some troubles. Okay, so that. Fairly normal, but other times the cause is far more grisly. Say, a decomposing body. As the Daily News reported in 2015, an Oklahoma man discovered his kitchen was bleeding, much to his dismay. Yep, that's the first thought if you see it bleeding. When police arrived to investigate, they discovered the terrible truth. His upstairs neighbor had died of natural causes, hit their head, and their blood had oozed down to the apartment below. That's fucking disturbing. And that ends the podcast. That was a beautiful note to end on. Hold on, I think. Let me scroll down. No, that was for sure it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the true, real worst case scenario of bleeding walls is there's a body.
No, that's definitely the worst case scenario of that. In which case, maybe you shouldn't be smelling your walls if they're bleeding.
And in which case, too, maybe we should be checking the inside of these statues.
Oh my god. Maybe there's far darker implications of this. Far darker.
Well, and with those implications, I have been Taylor, here with Chelsea, both of whom I assume are hopefully bleeding internally the right way that we've discussed. We are Journey to the Fringe. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Journey to the Fringe. If you have liked what you have listened to, please like, share, subscribe, or follow, depending on what venue you are listening to us through. Also, please, if possible, leave a 5-star review, as that really helps us in the algorithms. Should you wish to interact with us, please check us out on your social media of choice. I bet you we are there. And if you really want to communicate with us and give us ideas for new episodes, or tell us that we're wrong and terrible, either way, please send us an email at journeytothefringe@gmail.com. For now, I'll see you in the next episode.